Hey guys, welcome to the Janus Project. Today we are continuing a series we started a few months ago on abortion. Now, a few months ago we started a series on abortion, and all we did is we covered the biblical arguments that people use to say that life begins at birth. We basically went through a whole list of verses and just kind of showed you that the people who claim that the Bible teaches life only begins at birth don't know what they're talking about. It's just that plain and simple. There's no argument to be had if you go through the verses like the woman whose belly swells, or again, I forget all the references off the top of my head. You can go back to the playlist. But again, look at the context, look at what's being said, and remember, we boiled it down to a few arguments. We said, first of all, God has the ability to kill. It's his prerogative. He created. He can kill. That's his job. We also went and we said we are not opposed to the killing of those who are guilty. All right. So the government does have the job of the sword. The government has the job to kill those who are not innocent. We also talked about sin. Sin has consequences, and so there are times where God will come in and say, "You are to wipe out everyone in that city." Okay, that has nothing to do with the abortion argument. What we have simply said is we as humans do not have the authority to make that call. We do not have the authority to look at an unborn child and say, all right, kill it. It's okay. The Bible's okay with it. It's just not. And I, in fact, have had a lot of discussions since then with people on Twitter and well, mostly Twitter. And you'd be surprised at how often those arguments come up. In fact, the guy who haunts my channel has posted them several times. And so that's the type of thing I get a lot. And so you'll see that list of verses. In fact, that's exactly where I got that list of verses, is people who kept tweeting that type of stuff at me. Now, let's take it a step further. The next argument you see is a whole series of arguments that basically say that it is a woman's right to choose. It is the woman's right of autonomy. You'll see a lot of theologians and other people coming out, women pastors and other people, who will say that it is God is for you to have life and to have life more abundantly. And if it's not your time to have a baby, then okay, that has nothing at all to do with it. First of all, we have to put in the dustbin the idea that God cares about your autonomy. He doesn't care about your autonomy. In fact, throughout the Bible, he's constantly reminding that he is the one in charge. He gives life, he takes life, all of that stuff. So, again, your autonomy does not matter to God. But on a biological level, on a scientific level, on a logical level, what are some of the arguments that come up for abortion? First of all, you'll see this one all the time. I annoy them because I will constantly say the unborn baby, and they will pipe up and say, it's not a baby, it's a fetus, get your biology straight. Okay, first of all, I get around it by first, baby bump, okay? When you are talking about a mother who's pregnant, what do you call her belly? You call it a baby bump. Why? Because it has a baby inside of it. How is that such a hard thing to understand? When you want it, it's considered a baby. When you don't want it, you take away the baby title and you just call it a fetus? I mean, does that logically make sense to you? I asked you the question. One day before it's born and one day after it's born. Is there a difference in that baby? And there are people like, well, when it passes through the birth canal, it activates this and this and this, and the baby starts to breathe on its own. But yes, it breathes on its own. That's all well and good. But what is the difference? Physiologically, genetically, what is the difference? There isn't one. All right. It's just this baby breathes through an umbilical cord. This baby breathes through its lungs. Okay. I was in the hospital for a solid month after I was born, and I asked you this question. I was hooked up to tubes and machines and all sorts of stuff. It took a solid month to get me to survive on my own. Was I not a human until I got off those machines? You have this famous Life magazine from '65. Is this not a human because it's not a baby, because it's a fetus? I was born 2 months premature. Okay? 2 months premature. Ask you this question. Was I not a human? Or would I have not been a human had I lived inside my mother for those 2 months? It doesn't make any sense. When we talk about this idea of something being a fetus, it's just where it lives. It's just where it lives. It's how it survives. It is, yes, inside the womb. But let me ask you this question. Is it still a human? Is it? I love this magazine. I've had this magazine for quite a bit of time. But what the magazine does is it draws attention to just the simple details of the unborn child. And it goes through and it shows from sperm and egg all the way up through. And so this is it at 3.5 weeks, bottom picture. This is it at 4 weeks. You got this picture right here. This is what it looks like at 5 weeks. you keep cycling your way through this magazine, and you've got 6 weeks and 6.5 weeks. And I had someone actually argue today. I was debating with them and discussing this topic. And I said, it is just as valuable, and they were misinterpreting everything I said because I think they were just trolling me, but whatever. But they actually came, and I said that the unborn child is still human. And so what they did is they were like, I'm looking at a picture of, it at so many weeks. Doesn't look like a human. And so I said, genetically, it is. And then they dismissed me and said I was an idiot and I didn't understand anything. But I asked you a question. Genetically, this is a human. Physically, this doesn't look so much like a human, but genetically it is. It is genetically distinct from the mother, genetically a separate human being altogether. Genetically, it is 100% human. And so if you say that something like a fetus is not worthy of life because it still lives inside the mother, it doesn't look like a human, or whatever excuse you make, I ask you this simple question. Where do we draw the line then? On the other side of the spectrum, when someone requires machinery to keep them alive, can we make the choice to just randomly kill them against their will? Or what happens if I'm in the military? I'm not in the military, but I've got friends who are. Let's say I'm in the military, I get both of my arms blown off, I can no longer feed myself or take care of myself. Am I less of a human because I lack the ability to keep myself alive? Am I less of a human because I don't look as human as other people? Where do we draw the line? Where do you draw the line when you say, oh, okay, this thing looks human enough, we're going to call it a human? This one, yeah, that looks human enough, but this guy right here, it's a weird little mutant. Nah, we're not going to call that a human. Where do you draw that line? I like the way one guy put it. His name's Trent. He's a Catholic apologist, and he was talking about the subject, and he uses, I believe it's NET. I think that's how he defines it, ENT or NET, it doesn't matter. And he said, the way you can look at this is given enough nutrition or nutrients, given the right environment, and given enough time, what will this always develop into? Nutrition, environment, and time. What will this always develop into? And so if you've got an unborn dog, you give it enough nutrients and the right environment, and you give it enough time, what's it going to develop into? It's going to develop into a dog. Okay, if I have an unborn cat, okay, so a cat fetus, I give it enough nutrition, environment, and time, what is it going to develop into? An adult cat, all right? But is it not a cat just because it's in the womb? No, it's still a cat. All right. And so just as we would have laws protecting endangered species, and that means you can't kill them before they're born either. All right. All those types of things. Why is it that we would say you cannot kill a human when they're 3 years old and they're just annoying and they take up space and they're just unable to be controlled and they just take so much work? You can't just decide to kill the 3-year-old. Why? Because it's a baby. It's a toddler. It's a human. But why is it that when you're looking at a 6-month-old baby in the womb, so a 6-month fetus, so as not to offend all of you pro-abortionists who get all your knickers in a wad, why is it that it's okay to rip that baby apart, but it's not okay to do that to a 3-year-old? In fact, it probably wouldn't even be okay to do that to a puppy. Why is it okay to do that to a human? And you scream, well, the woman's right to choose. It's the woman's body. No, it's not the woman's body. It's not the woman's body at all. In fact, we live in a culture that doesn't know the difference between man and woman, so we'll get into that some other time. But you have a woman, a female, okay, with a vagina, and genetically speaking, she is all female. And she can have in her body a little man with a penis, all of the genetic traits of a man. That's not her body. She's not suddenly intersex or something. That's not the case at all. So you have a mother who could have all the structures of a man inside of her because she's pregnant with a little boy. It's not her body. And so people are like, well, I don't think we should be forced to give birth. Okay, but you chose to have sex. You chose to have that child. You chose to play the game where the risk is that. Nobody forced you to do that. And before you play the card, well, what about rape? What about incest? What about harm to the life of the mother? That's such a small insignificant percentage of the actual abortions that are performed that it's not even part of the argument. It's not even part of the argument. All right. In fact, most of the people I've talked to, and they start bringing up, well, what about rape? What about incest? And I say, okay, if I made an allowance for that argument, would you be okay banning all other abortions? No, they're not. They're not. They basically come down. And in fact, I had someone say, oh, I agree with you. It's a life, but I still think the mother should have the right to choose. Okay, where does that line get drawn? The moment the baby passes through the birth canal? Well, what if the baby's born by C-section? Well, the moment the baby's outside the mom. Well, what if the umbilical cord hasn't been cut? It's still the same. I mean, I've seen all 4 of my children get born by C-section. All right, there's not a huge load of difference between inside the mother and outside the mother. There isn't. In fact, my firstborn took quite a while before he started crying because he had choked himself on his nuchal cord. What's the difference? Where do you draw that line? If we don't draw the line at it's human, we are not allowed to kill it. Where do we draw that line? And some places say, well, when it has a heartbeat. Okay, that's really early. But how come you can kill it before it has a heartbeat? And what happens later on in life when it has to have a pacemaker or something to help it keep a heartbeat? Where do you draw this line? That's why whenever you say you can detect this thing, you can't kill it. I think that's a good line to draw, because obviously you're going to have things that happen before you even know you're pregnant. But you've got a month. Most of the times you know. So guys, it's a little long, a little more drawn out of a rant. But that's some of the arguments I've been having lately. And I've been studying out Gulags. I've been studying out the Nazi death camps. I've been studying out the rape of Nanking, which was a terrible atrocity that took place in China. In every one of those cases, you know what happens? You dehumanize the thing you want to destroy. You dehumanize. You dehumanize what you want to eliminate, and then you go ahead and eliminate it. You know what they're doing with these? They're trying to say it's a bundle of cells. It's not a human yet. Or, oh, you know what? The mother's life trumps the baby's life. Okay, fine, whatever. But what you've done is you are saying this is not a human. Or if it is a human, it doesn't have the rights of personhood yet. So we can do whatever we want with it. But I ask you this question. It might be a fetus, but it's a fetus of what? Humans. It is a human fetus. It might be not a baby, but it's a pre-baby, okay? Whatever. A baby's not a teenager. Okay, a teenager has more value, can do more work, can live on its own. So can we kill anything that can't live on its own? Can we kill a toddler? Because they take a ton of work. Can we take a baby? Can we kill a baby? Because they take more work than the baby in the womb. I have 4 of them. I've had 4 of them in the last 5 years. I know what I'm talking about. What do you do? This isn't just a clump of cells. This isn't just a fetus. This isn't just a woman's right to choose. This is a life. And I want you to look into the eyes, and I want you to look at the faces and the demeanors of those people who defend abortions, and there's something wrong with them. I won't even make a caveat of that. There is something wrong with someone when they defend the killing of a baby. And if you defend the killing of a baby, there's something wrong with you. It's evil. It's wicked. All right? That's why I do these videos, because I want you to see this is what an unborn baby looks like. This is what they look like as they develop in the womb. This is what they look like in embryo and various other stages. This is a baby. When you see politicians arguing about partial birth abortions and they want to take a pair of scissors, stick it up into the back of the neck and scramble the brain, snip the spinal cord, cut the baby apart, pull it out of the womb and repiece it back together. They are talking about this. This is not a clump of cells. This is not like having a kidney removed, okay? So I want you to do your research before you defend abortion, because it is the most monstrous of crimes you could imagine. It pales. It makes all these other atrocities we study in history pale in comparison. And over 50 million, I think it's up to 60 million something, have been aborted in the most brutal of ways since 1970. And I think it's a great thing that Roe versus Wade is being overturned. But that doesn't mean abortion is going to become illegal. It just means abortion is going to be kicked back to the states. So if you are pro-life, don't give up the fight just because Roe versus Wade gets overturned. And if you're pro-choice, Roe versus Wade doesn't mean that abortion is illegal. If you think that, you don't know what you're talking about. All Roe versus Wade does is it kicks it back to the states. So Massachusetts will still be pro-choice. California as wicked as this state is, will still be pro-choice. And states like Texas and other states will now be able to make laws that say, nope, it's banned. And I hope God blesses those states for it. I hope he pours out an unbelievable amount of blessing, and I hope he curses the states that continue to defend abortion. And I say that as a guy who lives in one of these states. I don't want to see this state cursed, but I can't ask for the blessing of this state. It's just absolutely terrible what they do to these babies, and it needs to stop. Guys, if you have any other questions, if you have any other arguments that you see pop up, leave them in the comments below. If you know someone who's pro-choice and you hear a lot of these arguments, throw this video at them. Let them argue with me. It happens all the time. But guys, thank you for joining me on the Janice Project. We're back in the series. We're studying out life and what the Bible has to say about it. But today, we really just looked at it from more of a logical point of view, from a biological point of view. We didn't even bring theology into it. If you want to see what I had to say on theology, go back to the previous episodes in this series, and you'll see all the Bible verses I talked about. Guys, thank you for joining me. If you haven't done so, please hit the subscribe button below, like this video, share it with a friend, and just leave some comments below. It helps the algorithm, helps me get noticed. And I appreciate it, guys, and I will catch you next time on the Janice Project.